Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Inside Fnatic's Brush. I am your host, Matt Scott, as usual, here to recap the past week's performances from LEC, but mainly Fnatic. So we're going to have a look as we've entered the first round of playoffs with a bunch of best of threes and already some first teams who have been eliminated from the spring split. So we'll cover all of that in our LEC segment. We'll go over the two best of threes of Fnatic, and for those of you who've watched the game, you'll understand the title of disappointing results. Despite the 2-0 and the 0-2, the overall gameplay wasn't necessarily the best. And we'll have a special segment of the focus. Usually I like to I like to talk about one player in particular. Following the latest results, it made sense for me to talk about the entirety of the team there, because it's going to be a bit of an angry episode. I'm not going to lie. Definitely disappointed by what was showcased, but we'll go into those details a bit further down. And as usual, our predictions as we head into round 2, which will see another batch of teams being eliminated, if I'm not mistaken, on Saturday and Monday, as those are the two lower bracket game days. Without any further ado, let's have a look at what happened in the LEC. So in the LEC, we've already had two teams that have left us: Giant X and SK Gaming. To start with those two games, I'll definitely say they were much closer than expected. Actually, both of them in their own quality. The Giant X Mad Lions games, looking at how Mad Lions has improved over the past few days, I was expecting them maybe to be much stronger against Gen X, who, despite having a good game against Fnatic, were just lacking on some main elements, especially when it came down to the team fights. And it really feels like Mad Lions are usually the better team fighting 5, I would say. However, the Giant X Mad Lions game was very close to Giant X actually eliminating Mad Lions, especially in that game 3. Was very much into Giant X's hands until they decided to do a very poor play. I believe it was around the Baron, and just gave away the game for free. And from that point onward, Giant X was unable to get back into it. And I think they'll definitely feel very disappointed in that situation where you're looking at a team that was finally improving after a very, very disappointing split, to be honest, just an overall split where they finally started to take shape in the final weeks, and you'd feel that they had probably more to show, but they weren't there yet. So it's hard to say if in summer they'll really peak, a bit like Excel did last year, because they've already done better results than Excel last year. So is that already their peak to sort of kick out in a lower bracket? It's very, very hard to say. But Mad Lions moves on with a little bit of struggle. I'm not gonna lie, and we'll have to face Vitality into their next game. On the other side, you have Team Heretics and SK, which I have to say was a bit of the same situation. SK coming very, very strong into the first game, but Zwairo definitely had a pop-off game on his Azir, which really helped Team Heretics make the difference, because Niski, when it comes to playoffs, usually has this extra layer of performance that he brings to the table. But so I really answered the call here for his team and managed to get Team Heretics their 2 wins, especially since obviously Team Heretics BDS. Um, we're expecting, I think, a much more competitive game in their first best of 3. Team BDS seem to be on a good trend right now, a bit like last year, where after a difficult regular split, they're back to being much more competitive, and they end themselves in fighting for winners finals against G2, who had maybe a close game versus Mad Lions at some point, still managed to get a 2-0, and had a crushing victory against Fnatic. Fnatic, who, as we know, had more or less of a close game against Giant X. When it came to team fight, they really, took over, it feels. But in some parts of the early and mid game, Giant X was definitely giving it to Fnatic in some cases where it felt like, this might be much more complicated than what we expected. But yeah, the more or less of a close game for Fnatic, who had managed to be a bit more conclusive when it came to the highlight points in the game. For instance, in the first game, the team fight in the second tier top lane, where they decide to engage before the rest of Giant X, the rest of the team of Giant X joins into the team fight. They smartly destroy the turret before continuing into the team fight. Very good positioning by Noah, who obviously helps with Azir taking over the team fight. So, some good elements here. A little bit of the same for Team Vitality versus SK, who, again, SK tried to be very, very competitive in there, getting one game against a, convincing Team Vitality in the past few days, who's at, top first combined on the score, but who's definitely doing much better than last year. That's for sure. You can already see the Mac effect getting into this team and having some, effects on them overall. Still some, blunders here and there where they're not completely clean. Obviously, the first game with what do you call it? The Yasuo, I believe that was the first game they played, and didn't work so well. But that's Karzi for you. He can have a blunder game and have an absolutely crushing game following that one. And the Karzi Hylissang duo is definitely coming together in that part of the split where they're looking to cement themselves as one of the better bot lane. Didn't work out as well, unfortunately, against BDS. I think obviously one of the other weaknesses of Team Vitality currently is Douglas, who's very good at getting early leads, but has a tendency to throw afterwards. I don't know if he puts himself too much, ahead in his mind and isn't as careful. He reminds me a bit of early days Razork, and for you, those of you who've paid attention, you will have seen that LECS put like a very short video about Razork's career, and that's what was pointed out, is that he's very good mechanically, he's able to get those early leads, but sometimes we'll do, and we've seen it ourselves when he first joined Fnatic, that he has that tendency of just throwing those games for no reason and making some crazy plays where you just kind of scratch your head and say, what just happened there? So I see a little bit of that into Douglas, and once maybe they manage to clasp him down a little bit and say, hey, you have that advantage on the enemy laner. Make sure to control it and not give away stupid shutdowns that especially at that level of competition, are gonna allow teams to get back into the game and become relevant again. So, yeah, just a quick overview, obviously, what's happening in the LEC. Condolences to Giant X and SK Gaming. We'll be having four other games going into the round two. In the upper bracket, we will have G2 going into BDS, which definitely will be an interesting one. Seeing how BDS is improving and the level that G2 is providing currently. In the lower bracket, we will start with Fnatic versus Team Heretics and Vitality versus Mad Lions. And the winner of each game will face on Monday in their first best of fives in the lower bracket to move on forward into round three, which will be the, I guess, semi-finals, finals, as you would call it, of the spring split. So for those out there who are Fnatic fans, tune in. I believe it's at 5 p.m. Tomorrow for the first games for Fnatic to stay alive, basically, in the competition. Speaking of which, we've mentioned obviously some of the results previously. I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing at Noah's face in the victory. It's like he's shocked that his team won. It's with his haircut. It's hilarious. But the 2-0 versus Giant X and the 0-2 versus G2. We'll start with the 2-0 versus Giant X, right? We'll start with the positive one, where 2-0 results is definitely what we were looking for, as following the sort of complicated, if not disastrous, week 3, where the team looked completely off, and it definitely feels like the issue was on the players feeling the illness throughout the week. So it feels like obviously they've recovered, but in the Giant X game now is by no means, and I want to state that first of all, by no means GX is and was going to be an easy team to start with. They were definitely give us a challenge. Giant X was one of those teams who was looking to have improved in the later stages of the regular split. So I think they were continuing on that trend with Jackie's especially, who looked like he was back to I'd say his rookie form that he showcased in winter, where I think a lot of people had eyes on him to say, hey, this kid's not too bad. We haven't heard much about him previously, but it feels like Giant X might have found a very interesting player within Jackie's. And you look at this and the way he played his Akali in the first game definitely gave a lot of problem. GX was a very clear plan, first of all, to aim everything on humanoid, and going back to usually what made teams facing Fnatic be successful is that you aim at the mid lane, at humanoid, who is a bit victim of his own success, in the sense that he manages his lane very, very well and will usually manage to push lanes into the enemy, forcing them to hug turret and have a bit more of a complicated time CSing. Which obviously, if his team isn't around him or he doesn't get the proper information, the proper vision, will get ganked easily. You had this time where even when they had the vision on Ignar roaming mid, he hit his ultimate with Rakan for the increased movement speed, flash, knock up, and was gangbanged right after. So obviously they wanted to hit at the core. On the first game, it didn't really matter because Humanoid played really, really well. Gets a 1v1 against Jackie's in the top lane. So all good in that aspect. It was a very close one. If Jackie's had hit that, backflip shuriken, he would have won that 1v1. Thankfully, a minion just came in front of Humanoid and was like, "Get down, Mr. President." And that was enough to save him on that one. Other aspects, obviously, as I mentioned previously, was that team fight in the top lane where we had a skirmish slash dive towards the end of the turn. They just managed to destroy it, and it looked kind of dicey as they were getting flanked in the sort of how do I call it, choke point area, and they really managed the space pretty well with the carries getting away from the flank, repositioning, and Razor and Jin keeping that front line to peel for them and giving them the space to do their DPS. Jackie still managed to get a kill on Noah, but it didn't really matter. That was a free Baron afterwards, and it was those moments that really made the difference in the game. The big team fights that helped Fnatic win the game, and it was the same for the second game. Second game, we see a Jinx for Noah, which you might have sort of split expectations for Noah's Jinx. Like, of course he's able to play it, but it's like, is the team able to play around it, which I think is the most important factor here. As you know, last time they hadn't really drafted anything for the Jinx to be able to DPS, which wasn't the case this time. We had the Vi, the Nautilus that was picked here, so some beefy frontline engage to allow Jinx to DPS, as well with Oscar, who pulled out the Rek'Sai, which was a great pick here. Disturbed the entire backline of GX and played his role really well. But this game definitely relied on Noah playing incredibly well. The first instance was when GX, the GX bot lane tried to catch Noah under his turret, and Noah just flashes enough to not get caught by Ignar's Rel. Exchanges DPS, gets the slow on him, ulti, and with the turret shots and the ulti, manages to get a kill for free. While that's happening, they catch Peach, who's inside of Fnatic's jungle, so the game suddenly turned around. It did get dicey again when they're starting to fight around that tri-brush in the bot lane, and as Fnatic tends to do many times, forget that they're playing against a Yone and just funnel themselves against a Yone ult who's just very happy to take everyone in a straight line, and made the game a bit more complicated. I believe it was like 3 to 4 kills given. I'm just reminded now that it wasn't Nautilus, it was a Tam Kench for June, which was an unexpected pick. I'll be very honest. It was something that I wasn't sure Fnatic was gonna, pick in the first place, and if Jin had it. But I've got to say, Jin, amazing player for Fnatic. He's bringing out some picks and performing really well between the Alistar and the Tam Kench, which are a bit different from the Realm Nautilus that we get all over the place. It was definitely something nice, and team fights were played rather well. Once they finally realized that they had to be careful with the Yone ult, very good spacing from Noah, who's just dishing DPM and or DPS, I should say. And I got the win. I got the win for Fnatic with a final team fight around the top side enemy jungle, and Noah blasting rockets all the time. Absolute threat. Definitely deserves, I think, his MVP for the series, as he played a good Lucian Nami combo. It's great to see that Fnatic has that in their pocket as well. And it was it was a decent game. There were some blunders, but obviously things that can be improved. But the most important was getting to 0 as they were heading into G2. Now, the G2 series. What is there to say? Really, unfortunately, that's the thing, is that the first game started well. Um, Humanoids, solo bolos, caps on his Aurelion Soul. Amazing, great showing for the team of like, okay, we're looking good. And the moment that happens, right after, we take some weird trade around the river bot jungle, and we give away like three, 4 kills. And so at that moment, you're like, guys, we're playing G2 here. We cannot allow ourselves to give them anything. And when I mean anything, it's anything. Like, you cannot give an inch to G2, as they're gonna run with it. And from that point onwards, it just felt like it was Hail Mary plays upon Hail Mary plays, and you're playing against a highly scaling team with the Aurelion Sol and who else was it? Let me check. I had the info. Just 2 little seconds, guys. There we go. Yeah, so that was the issue, right? Is that you're facing a Aurelion Sol, it's just gonna stack, just gonna get bigger, and you give away more and more space to him, and more stacks, and it really started going haywire around the 15-minute mark. And after there, G2 are very happy to snowball their lead, and in less than 26 minutes, the game was folded. And you're like, well, what the hell happened? How did the game accelerate this much? And it's very simple. Is that what happened? Is the inability of doing a controlled mid game, where G2 are very happy to take those elements away from you and say, well, yeah, that's what you failed on. That's what happens. So you just get absolutely demolished here, and voila. And that's the symptom of it, right? That's the symptom of Fnatic's mid-game issues, who you'd think were solved. Apparently not at all. And it gets quite frustrating when you start seeing the same mistakes, because it definitely feels that they're working on it when you look at the Legends in action. That sure, they had some sickness the previous week, but what happened was the quality of scrims spur. Did people now have level of confidence? I mean, it was very weird. You would not have recognized the current version of Fnatic. It felt like there was still this sort of mental block against G2, which I thought was over. And for me, the mental block against G2, I thought that was really a symptom of reckless back then, and that with a new roster, new players, it wasn't the case. But I mean, this time was worse, and that was just the first game. Second game was folded in 20 minutes, and the big issue here is that, and I think also for first game, I didn't really mention it, but the first game is that I believe we put ourselves into a tricky situation where we don't go for a front line. We go for an interesting pick, which is the Rumble support, which is being played in LCK, and I believe was also played in LCS finals. But you look at that and you're like, well, what's being picked? if we are going with the Rumble, which is a squishy pick, if we don't have the front line, especially against G2's comp, which is just a comp that runs you in. So if you have like no hard CC or anything to stop them, push them away, you don't have an Azir or anything, it's like, well, what do we do? Because Razork's not going to do much with the Xin Sao. Aatrox's gonna do much. The Ashol can do so much, and there's nothing in June or Humanoid's kit really to have a good way to prevent it. Like, you're looking at the Renekton, who's gonna slice and dice into the backline. You're looking at the Volibear, who's gonna jump into your backline. You're looking at the Aurelion Soul, who's going to glide into your backline. And then you have the Nami and the Lucian, who are just going to CC and pulverize everyone in the middle. And then for the second draft, you're like, you know what? I'm going to give all the comfort picks away to G2. Give them the Rek'Sai, give them the Volibear, give them the Azir. All the bullshit champions for free. And I don't know. I don't know what to say from there. It's like, what happened in draft? What happened in draft? You're literally getting your players to play on hard mode. And it's hard to evaluate the player's level if you're not giving them the tools to be successful. So how can you evaluate this game? So, instead of evaluating the game, we're going to talk about the players and what's going on. Now, I do see that some people are getting mad at Oscar, but Oscar isn't even the issue here. This is a team issue. And for those who've listened to the recent interview of Hedon, he's actually quite positive about Oscar. So I'll rather listen to the coach, who sees a lot of potential in Oscar, than a few bad stage games, which are much more the symptom of the team not playing well than just isolate a player in particular. And one of the issues is that if Razork is in his top form, it feels like it affects the whole team, because he has a bit of that main shot caller role, where if you've listened to the recent voice comms that were released earlier today, there's a whole team fight where he's the one calling the action, which in a sense is great, because it avoids everyone screaming all over the place, and you have one precise direction of how you want to conduct the team fight. But it's about the situation of live by the blade, die by the blade. And I'll definitely say I'm no expert, but it feels like the trend that if Razork is not in his A game, the whole team is affected by it. And while I hear and I understand that, Humanoid is moving a bit more into a leadership role, so he's having much more of a voice on how he wants the game to be conducted, and Noah is also being a bit more vocal on, depending on certain picks, how he wants the game to be played as well. There's definitely more elements in that sense, and there's the capacity within those players to do it. Like this is the five that can do it. Like when you look at it, you look at the legends in actions, you look at the vibe, even in the losses, there's still some solidarity while also being very critical on their performance. So it's, for me personally, I'm a bit of a complicated point because it really looked like there was huge improvement in the regular split until week 3. And then since week 3, from one game to another, it doesn't look great. So against a team like GX, it's close, but we managed to close it at 2-0, and our team fighting looks really crisp. And again, against the team versus G2, we lose our minds. The drafts aren't great, and we're going constantly for Hail Mary plays, which is like desperate plays. And I personally thought that these type of strategies, that was behind. I was back in 2022, maybe 2023 maximum, but we were turning a page with Nightshare's approach and Gak's approach. Now, obviously, there's the recency of Hidden being added into the roster and potentially, adding an extra layer of coaching and improvement for those people. We're going to see, how that works from one week to another. If it's really been what I'll call a bad spell of week 3 and round 1 of playoffs, and we start strong again versus, in the round 2. In that case, we're looking good. We're looking good. Because what you need to consider here is that we are going in facing Team Heretics. Now, while Team Heretics, I'll admit it, isn't looking as good as they did in the spring split, they're still a very competitive team. Like, you cannot underestimate the roster currently. And in a best of 3, you can very quickly find yourself in a 0-2 situation. So, in itself, it works out well for Fnatic, as the Team Heretics game that's going to start us off tomorrow will be the test. It will be the benchmark of where we're sitting at. If we're going into a clean 2-0, I think we can be very, very positive about moving forward cleanly. If we're going into a 2-1, it depends how that 2-1 happens, right? Are we looking at a 2-1 that's, each team are taking over their individual games and it just came down to decision making and draft? Or is it a scrappy 2-1 where everyone fights back, the lead is on one side and it comes back to the other and it bounces back to the other? That will be much more concerning, in my opinion. There's been the word discipline being thrown around quite a bit in the Legends in Action, recently. I want to see the discipline. I want to see it. It gets talked about it. I want to see it. Because the game against G2, there was none of that discipline. We were very much on the contrary of discipline. It was chaos. Absolute chaos. A chaos that folded the game in 21 minutes. Now, I don't know what it takes for this team to regain that discipline. If it's on the way they play, if it's in their mindset, if it's in the approach to the game. Because consider this, right? You play Saturday, you have that one day to prep for the best of 5. So that discipline has to stay in between those games. And it felt like last week that discipline disappeared on the Sunday, going into Monday. So that's my gripe with the situation. But again, I don't think there's, in terms of the players, there's nothing to throw. There's nothing to throw. This is the group of 5 that's going to go get the title. But they need to be serious about it. They talk about the discipline. Apply that discipline. Show us that you're not going instinctively into someone full LPL style. You see someone, you want to kill someone. Because G2 are the type of team that are specifically waiting for you to do those mistakes. They are very happy to have you come in and counter your aggression. So, what I want to see going into the first best of 3, the Team Heretics game, is controlled game, no desperate plays, no unnecessary throws when the game is under control, because there's unnecessary aggression on one side or the other of the map. And then I also want to see us take back control of the draft. Because that was terrible versus G2. I don't know what happened. I'm very happy to see a Rumble support. But surely it has to be combined with some form of frontline. I'm gonna have a quick look at the Rumble support games. Let's see. Support. So, let's see. Can I have match lists? Right, so I'm looking at the last time it was played, Weibo versus GGG. They pair it with a Cassante. Perfect. Other one, they pair it with Tanky Rek'Sai. Very good. There they have... Where is it? There they have more of a front line with the Renekton, who's a bit of a backline, Again, T1 who played it, Rek'Sai. I don't understand. I'm looking Genji's win against Adamon Kia. They've got Sejuani and Cassante. So, what are we doing? What are we doing? And what are we waiting for? Let's just get the right picks. Let's make sure that we give space to our carries. And that's it. Really. And I still think it's doable. I was very doom and gloom after the G2 game, but I reviewed some elements from the GX and G2 game, and it's like, well, the first game against G2 could have been really winnable, but there's definitely something about the gameplay that went wrong. But anyways, you guys let me know what you think in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, on Reddit, or on the Fnatic app. Very curious to hear about you guys' feedback and what you feel about this. Noah is certainly not mid. He had an amazing Jinx game, which pretty much won the game. So the statement is false. going into predictions. Very quickly, the best of threes, the last best of threes of the spring split. Fnatic versus Team Heretics. You guys have 2-0. I think it's going to be a crazy 2-1, to be honest. It's going to be a Fnatic heart attack moment. We can't escape it. Vitality versus Mad Lions. You guys went for Vitality. I think Mad Lions might upset as well. And also I need to maybe make some different picks because you guys are leading the predictions by 5 points. So I need to be very, very careful. I think this one's going to be a very, very interesting one. I think those are two teams who have their specific advantages. And I'm definitely going to be looking at the bot lane. Karzi Hili versus Supa and Alvaro. That's going to be a crazy one. G2 versus BDS. I was quite surprised you guys just think that G2 is going to dominate. I think BDS is going to at least take one game. They're definitely looking a bit better than regular split, but I don't think they're there yet. But they're slowly getting back their level. Team Heretics versus Team Heretics or Fnatic versus Vitality versus Mad Lions. We have both agreed that it's a that Fnatic goes through it in the case versus Team Heretics, and we're looking at a 3-1 for you guys and a 3-2 for myself. It's if it's gonna be a win, it's gonna be a banger. It's gonna be a heart wrencher. And nothing's gonna be easy for those playoffs. But we'll see. There's some points to go and get. There's a trophy to get as well. So now is not the time to stop, and definitely need to beat those teams and go the long way, because that's how Fnatic does it. They never like to play on easy mode. They always go the long way. And the long way they will have to go. But with that said, guys, thank you again for tuning in on this episode of round 2 of the playoffs for Spring Split. Make sure to follow all the socials here if you want to know next time I'm going live on Twitter. All the VODs are available on YouTube. And if you're more of a listener, Spotify inside the Fnatic's brush, you have the whole catalog available there. Guys, enjoy the games this weekend. Hopefully Fnatic makes it through. Make sure to have your pacemakers ready. And as usual, always Fnatic. Cheers.